Well, hello there and welcome back to our video series on the topic of hormones. So now that we know what hormones are and what they do and how their levels is controlled, let's take a look at where they're actually produced in your body. Where exactly are all these endocrine glands which are responsible for those hormones, which are responsible for all these weird changes in your body? So what endocrine glands are there? Firstly, we have the hypothalamus. Well, technically the hypothalamus is part of the nervous system, right? It's part of the brain. However, the hypothalamus also produces hormones, and that's why we can consider it to be an endocrine gland. So what hormones does the hypothalamus produce? Well, it turns out that the hypothalamus produces hormones which regulate the secretion of some pituitary gland hormones. So let's take an example from the previous video. So in the last video, we saw how the pituitary gland produces a hormone called follicle stimulating hormone, FSH, which then controls the production of estrogen by the ovaries. Well, it turns out that FSH is also under control, and it's being controlled by another hormone which is released by the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus produces a hormone called GnRH, which stands for gonadotropin releasing hormone. You don't need to know this, just some extra. So gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH. And this hormone then stimulates the pituitary gland to produce FSH. So the main point is that the hypothalamus produces some hormones, and those hormones regulate the secretion of pituitary gland hormones. Now next is the pituitary gland. Now we've seen that the pituitary gland secretes hormones like FSH, which regulate the secretion of hormones by other endocrine glands, right? So the pituitary gland will produce FSH, and that affects your ovaries. The pituitary gland also produces hormones like ADH. And so on. So interestingly, some people consider the pituitary gland a bit of a master gland. It produces a lot of hormones which then cause other organs to produce hormones as well. Right? For example, here you can see the FSH, right? FSH here, produced by the pituitary gland will stimulate the ovary to produce estrogen. FSH produced by the pituitary gland will stimulate the testes to produce testosterone. FSH also produces a hormone which causes the thyroid gland to produce thyroid hormones, and so on. So it seems to be like a master gland that stimulates the rest of the organs in the body to produce their hormones. Alright, so we also have the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland secretes thyroid hormones which regulate metabolic rate and respiration of our cells. And then we have these adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are located slightly above the kidneys, and they secrete the hormone adrenaline, which we'll look at a bit more later. And then we know the islets of Langerhans in the pancreas, right? Those are endocrine glands, which secrete insulin and glucagon that help to regulate blood glucose concentration. And finally, we have the ovaries, right? The ovaries secrete estrogen and progesterone, two very important hormones in females. And the testes secrete testosterone. Now, some of you will ask me, why does this person here have both ovaries and testes? It's just a diagram. Yes, there's no one who has both, but we need to put... Would you rather have two diagrams? So just be happy that they're on the same diagram. Alright, so here I would like to remind you that you have a little assignment to do for the holidays. Please go to this website, copy the template, and produce a yearbook entry for a certain gland. So you can choose, for example, you can be an ovary or testis or adrenal gland or islets of Langerhans or thyroid gland, pituitary gland or hypothalamus. Or if you can find others, just do it, alright? And do a good job so that we'll share the best food when we come back. Alright, we're going to end off this video by comparing the nervous system and the endocrine system. Alright, we saw the nervous system in the previous topic. And currently we're looking at the endocrine system. Now both are ways of signaling. In the sense they are both signaling systems in the body that help to coordinate different parts of the body to respond to changes. So it's a bit like snail mail versus email, right? Both are ways of communication, but one is faster than the other, and there are also other similarities and differences. So I want you to put your thinking hats on and think about what are the similarities and differences between these two systems. So to start you thinking about it, you can use these two examples. So think about how the endocrine system is involved in regulating blood glucose. So let's say this girl is eating a very big cake and the blood glucose in the body increases above the set point. How does the endocrine system respond in that case and coordinate the body to respond? And in this case, here's the withdrawal of a hand from a hot object, right? So there's some stimulus in the environment here. And how does the nervous system coordinate the body to respond to this? So as you think about these two, which you've already learned before, I want you to look for the similarities between them. So take about 1 or 2 minutes to think about it, and then you can pause the video now, and then you can play again after you've thought about it for a while. Alright, so I hope that you've had a good think about it, and you recognize how the similarities between the two. So for example, you might have realized that in both cases, there is a stimulus and a receptor involved. The stimulus stimulates the receptor. The receptor then produces a signal, which is sent to certain target organs, and then the target organs produce some sort of response. So in the case of blood glucose, so the stimulus is an increase in the blood glucose level, and the receptors in the pancreas will detect that. After detecting that, the pancreas will then produce insulin, right? The signal in this case is insulin, which is a hormone. And this signal will be carried to the target organs, the liver and the muscles, which will then produce the response, which is to decrease the blood glucose level back to the set point. Now, in the case of the nervous system, the stimulus in this case is the heat, right? And then the receptors in the skin will detect that. And then the signal is sent to the target organ. In this case, it's the arm muscles, and in this case, the signal is nerve impulses, right, in the nervous system. And then the muscles will then respond by withdrawing the hand. So in both endocrine control and nervous system control, we have stimulus, receptor, we have some sort of signal being sent out, we have some target organs or effectors, and then we have a response being produced. Alright, so here's a summary of that. Similarities, both play a role in coordination, helping the body to respond to some change in the environment. Both involve similar elements, a stimulus, a receptor, some signal sent to effectors, and then target organs carrying out a response. So how then are they different? Well, to help you think about this, you can consider these thinking questions. Firstly, what is the signal in both cases? What's the difference? What do you think is the difference in the speed? How fast is the response produced in each case? And then what do you think is the difference in terms of how long the responses last? Now, if you need some help, you can also turn to your textbook, page 294. It's a nice table there to compare both. I want you to have a look at that as well. So pause here, have a read, have a think through before you read, and then continue on once you are done with that. Okay, so I hope that you've read through the textbook and thought a bit about it, about the differences between nervous control and endocrine control. So here's just a slide to summarize it all. So in nervous control, we know that it involves neurons, right, and nerve impulses. These are the signals that are being sent. But in endocrine control, we involve hormones. So in nervous control, we have electrical signals and also chemical signals. Why chemical? Because we have synapses, remember our neurotransmitters. But in the case of endocrine control, we just have chemical messengers or chemical substances called hormones. So that's chemical transmission. Next, in nervous control, we have nerve impulses transmitted by neurons. Right, that's how the signal gets passed on. But in endocrine control, we have hormones transmitted by the bloodstream. So nervous control tends to be more rapid, more fast, faster response. Endocrine control, well, it takes a bit more time for the hormones to be transported by the blood and then diffuse into the tissue fluid, and then act on the cells. So it's slower and relatively more slow acting. But because nervous control is very rapid, the effects that it causes are often more short-term. However, in endocrine control, the hormones can either cause long-term effects, right? So for example, insulin causing your blood glucose level to drop, that doesn't happen instantly, but it happens across maybe an hour or two. But endocrine control can also have short-term effects, and we'll see that in the case of adrenaline. So endocrine control, in a sense, is more powerful in a sense if you want a longer-term change. So you can also think about puberty, right? Like in testosterone production or estrogen being produced, it actually causes changes in your body across years. So it's a longer-term effect. Nervous control can be voluntary or involuntary, so I can cause myself to do something, I raise my hand, run here, run there, or it can be involuntary, like when my heart rate goes up or down. But endocrine control most of the time is involuntary. I mean, I don't know about you, I can't control the amount of testosterone I produce or estrogen. That'd be really weird, right? That's not really a voluntary thing. And finally, nervous control tends to be localized. Now what that means is that it tends to be in a particular location. So if my brain sends a signal, it sends it to, let's say, my finger or my arm to raise up. So that only my arm is affected. However, endocrine control usually has widespread effects. So it can affect more than one target organ. Right? The hormone can circulate through the whole bloodstream and affect a very large area. So it's like an AOE, area of effect very big. Right? It can circulate in the whole body and affect many different organs. However, if the nervous system wants to affect many different organs, it needs to do it through many separate nerve pathways. Right? But the hormones can do it just through the bloodstream alone. Okay, so here's a summary table of the differences between the two forms of control. And we're going to end the video here. I hope that you had a good time learning about hormones. So in the next video, we're going to talk a bit more about specific examples of hormones in our body. Alright, so I'll see you there. Until then, keep your hormones to yourself.